Hey, Vaughn, I was going to ask you a question about the tanks. Oh, he's there.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
going
yeah.
to I was going to ask you a question about the tanks, and one of the things that I read, and I was going to ask you this earlier, was one of the things that I read somewhere was the reason that the tanks were staying on the roads were that they were lacking minesweeping capability. And I didn't know if that was true or not, but it sounded kind of, logical because they seemed like that they were easy pickings in like one straight column. And there were a lot of people saying that, they should have spread the various carriers and everything out, but they couldn't do that because they didn't have some sort of minesweeping capability, but I didn't know anything about it.
Well, they had minesweeping
Wondering if you do.
capability, but like even Mehdi said, when you're doing night operations and like they're trying to sneak up, so they got to be blackout, which means no lights. Maybe they've got night vision goggles for their drivers, and then they've got no radio communications because they got to be dead quiet. They can't be detected. So they might bunch up like that because you can't really, like Mehdi was the one that was talking about. You can't really operate that way at night, spread out like 100 meters apart or 50 meters apart because you'll lose each other. Plus, on top of that, figure these guys are not experienced tankers on the M1. They did have mine clearing equipment, and it looks like what they were trying to do was go. They were coming off that
It's
narrow.
not mine clearing. It's not mine clearing. It's mine detecting. If they did, so a mine roller wouldn't be considered a goddamn mine clearing. It's just mine detecting until it blows up, and we don't really have mine clearing things for offensive purposes, Vaughn. In the American military, we can send them
Well,
a
I mean,
husky.
what they were doing, what it looks like they had that blade in the plows. It looks like they came off that trail and they were scraping out an area that they thought was mine free so that the tanks could drive off the road and then line up so they would be facing, attack from a broad front. And then they were going to cut lanes off of that big parking lot area. And that seems to be where they got hit. Like they were bunched up there waiting for their lanes to get cut because they only had like one or two blades, and those aren't going to last the whole way because they're going to take damage. And then they had some scrapers and rollers, but for as far as they had to go, that wasn't really enough of that type of stuff to make it through. And then they were putting mine rollers on M ramps and shit. That's like a one hit deal. Once it gets hit, you're lucky if the M ramp can still operate. They'll be fine, but the mine roller thing is gone. And you saw that one M ramp hit a mine, then roll forward and hit another mine. So I mean, like they should have had MIC-LIC charges. Like I said, I was on a tank. So the way I would see it would have done is we would have moved up and like supported the combat, the combat engineers, and they would have had vehicles. They would have rolled up with a MIC-LIC charge, fired that out, cleared a lane. Then we probably would have had tanks with the blades on them and the plows go in front to protect the engineers as they planted flags and marked the lane to move through. But I mean, that's all why you have complete air superiority. No one's bombing you. No one's shooting missiles at you. No one's dropping artillery on you. I mean, if they had that, it would have been. They were set up good. It's just, they were missing half the puzzle.
I don't think that even if they had artillery and air, it would have gone good for them. Look, this all goes back to how horribly it was planned and how horribly the location was, how horribly the point of attack was. The lack of MIC-LICs, the lack of combat engineers in NATO. You don't put armor in front of men. Usually there's dismounted combat engineers on the floor sweeping. I mean, I was in front of light armored vehicles in Afghanistan. I was in front of MRAPs. I was in front of Buffaloes, which actually clear mines. The Marine Corps puts men in front of armor. Why? Because it's more effective. But there was none of that. There was no MIC-LICs. There was no APOBs. There was no anything for clearing anything to actually push forward. Forget about the air. Forget about the artillery. Even the simplest of things to advance a armored vehicle, there's no open avenue of approach. So if there's no line charge, why are you moving these forces towards a tree line? And another thing I will say is...
What is your theory on that, though, Dan? Why do you think they did behave this way, which seems objectively stupid to everybody?
I think that the American military and whoever trained them is actually incompetent, John. Like I truly am starting to believe that we're so far behind the Russian and the conventional warfare, that we're actually just thinking that this is the way to fight, and we're testing it and it's failing. Like, it's either they want them to lose 100% or they're actually bad. And I think that the truth is that NATO is actually very bad at war. I haven't seen one good move by them. This entire time I've been complaining to why is this happening? Like, this is so bad. I've been complaining for like the entire year. There hasn't been one good idea, and it's sad because this is our country basically leading the NATO and the Ukraine. It's us who's gonna train these guys, and they're being trained wrong. So it's very, very bad. It's bad
I
leadership.
have a
This
question.
is,
Actually, I have a question for you, Dan. Maybe
yeah.
do you think that maybe they were counting on different weather? Because I saw some videos where it looks like there was some kind of heavy fog that ended up clearing up. So maybe they were counting on that. Maybe they thought they could make a mad dash.
No.
The weather was right, and it wasn't what they expected.
Anybody that like in the chat, you'll see people saying Miklik line charts, because this is the only way. This is the most conventional way of moving armor up through a minefield, is with the line charge, which opens up a path for a tank. So even if you launch this down, you would have had great opportunities just to do a 100-yard dash. And so, like, they didn't even do that. So I think that it's just it's bad planning and it's bad leadership. And
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
mostly due to NATO.
they just didn't. I mean, there's just little like that Miklik charge. I mean, go back and watch some of the breaching operations the Marines and the Army did on the Kuwaiti border with the Miklik charges and the plows and the mine clearing tanks and stuff. I mean, it was all, you know, it was a ballet. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like they're trained to do that. I mean, these guys obviously weren't trained. I mean, they had some of that equipment on the tanks, but it looks like that Leopard got hit, or maybe got scared and dropped it, or maybe got damaged and they disconnected their roller system they had with the little blade on the front. But I mean, it also looked like they were digging in too deep too. Like maybe they were getting hung up on that, like it was going deeper than they wanted. So they, instead of just scraping the top like they're supposed to, they were digging in, because that plow looked like it was dug down in the mud pretty bad. So I mean, but then again, can that be because they were so badly trained? I mean, you can train them to do everything, but it's not like they got to practice it and practice it and practice it. And think about it, the guys they're going against right now, they've been doing this shit for a year.